Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli here with a brand new In the Shop for you today. And I got a good one for you today. We get asked all the time, give me your top 3 rods to use. Your top 3 rods to do a little bit of everything. You know, and that's a tough question because there are so many techniques in fishing. From little ultralight baits to giant swim baits. But I'm going to answer your question, and I'm going to give you my top 3 rod choices to do everything in bass fishing, okay? You know, the nice thing about it is I've had a chance to work with Abu Garcia, and we have a line of rods and reels that are the Revo Ike series. Revo Ike rods and Revo Ike reels. And I really got to design rods that can do a lot of stuff. So going through that list of the rods and reels I designed for Abu, I came up with these 3 to do a little bit of everything. And I'm going to start with the rod, in my opinion, that is the most versatile rod ever created. And this one happens to be a casting rod. You're going to see that these 3 rods, I've mixed casting and spinning because I think that's important. But I want to start with a casting rod. And this one is a workhorse. When you talk about being able to do a little bit of everything, this is the rod. And I really want you to pay attention to the action and the gear ratio when I describe this. That's the most important thing. Even if you're not using Abu rods, if you're using Daiwa or Shimano or St. Croix or Lew's, whatever rod you're using, doesn't matter. Look at these actions. And that really gives you an indication on the versatility of the rod and the purposes of the rod. So my best all-around rod ever in the history of the world is a 7.4 medium heavy. 7.4 medium heavy, right? So the great thing about a 7.4, it's not a short rod that limits you in your techniques. It's not an ultra long rod that's more limiting in techniques, right? It's a 7.4 medium heavy. And that's a middle of the road length rod. And medium heavy is sort of a middle of the road action. I want to look at this tip with you and talk about what medium heavy means, right? Because medium heavy in different rod manufacturers can mean a little subtle differences in what medium heavy means. But to me, a medium heavy is about a 30 to 25% of that rod has a little flex, and the rest is backbone, okay? So when you get a rod, you go out and you get a 7.4 rod, the best thing to do is buy them in person. Go to a retailer. It's a great way to try them. Even if you don't buy them there, even if you go to a retailer to test out this action, it's the best to feel the rod. But a medium heavy to me, about 25 to 30% of the end of the rod, the tip of the rod, has a little bit of give to it, right? So look at that flex, right? And let me hold the rod a different way and I'll show you. So you can see that when I put a load on the rod, I've got bend from the tip of the rod, let's count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, to about my 4th or 5th guide. Look at that. I've got flex to the tip. But from that 4th or 5th guide, look, when I put that load on, that arc stops at that 4th or 5th guide, and it turns into backbone, right? So a medium heavy rod, a majority of the rod, right? 75, 80%, 70%, somewhere between 80 and 70% of the rod, 75% of the rod is backbone. There's no flex. That's a medium heavy, okay? So a 7.4 medium heavy rod. Let me go to the reel and then we're going to talk about how versatile this thing is. Paired with a low profile casting reel in a faster gear ratio. All right? Listen, if you're limited to 3 rods, we're going to talk about the other 2 in a second, but if you're limited to 3 rods to do it all, I want you to have at least one of your low profile casting reels to be in a high gear ratio. All right? What does a high gear ratio mean? What does that mean? In my opinion, a high gear ratio bait casting reel is anything from the mid-7s all the way up to the 9s. They've got, Abu Garcia has Revo rockets that are 9.1 to 1 now, that are, in the high 9s, some of them. So I want you to have a high speed, low profile casting reel. This one I love because it's real versatile. It's not super high and it's not on the low end of high. It's right there in the middle. And this is a 8-0 to 1 gear ratio. 8-0 to 1. To give it to you in other terms, with this reel, I can pick up 33.83 inches in 1 revolution of the reel handle, okay? 33.83 inches of line I pick up with one revolution of the reel handle. So 8-0 to 1 gear ratio. And that's important because a lot of the techniques, with this rod being versatile, a lot of the techniques, we need speed, we need line recovery, we need to take up slack quickly, and that 8-0 to 1 is going to allow you to do that, okay? The other thing, make sure on your low profile casting reel, whatever brand you choose, have that high gear ratio, and also look for a couple things that should be standard. Anti-reverse, right? No knuckle slap on that reel handle. Should have an instant anti-reverse system on it. A great drag, look for a great drag system on it. Look for a lot of ball bearings, right? Look for a reel that has 8, 10 ball bearings or more, and that's going to be a nice, smooth reel. And again, this is the Revo Ike 8-0 to 1. All these low profiles come in right, left-hand retrieve. Pick the one that's comfortable for you. But here we have it. Fast gear ratio reel on a 7.4 medium heavy. And this is my workhorse because I can do everything with it. I can fish a jig, a Texas rig. I can throw a big spinner bait, a chatter bait, a buzz bait. I can throw a frog, a swim jig. I can use fluorocarbon or braid, or a combination of braid to a fluoro leader, right? This 7.4 medium heavy, a 7.4 medium heavy rod with a fast gear ratio reel will become your workhorse when you're fishing a casting combo. Remember, for me, the breakdown of when do I use a casting versus a spinning, right? When do I use each one? And you've heard me say it in other in the shops. My rule of thumb is based on the weight of the lure. When that lure is heavier than a 1/4 ounce, right? A 1/4 ounce or heavier, I prefer a casting rod. When that lure weighs a 1/4 ounce or less, I prefer a spinning rod. That's a good rule of thumb for when to choose each one. But number 1 of my top 3 most versatile fishing combos is the 7.4 medium heavy with a fast gear ratio reel, 8-0 to 1. One down, okay, I wanted to start with the killer right there. Let's go to that spinning rod now, since we had it in our hand already. And let me start by saying, I know I have a lot of people watching right now, and you don't like spinning rods. You only like to fish casting rods. Let me invite you, let me plead with you to get a spinning rod into your arsenal. Once again, for those days when you gotta throw little lures, right? Little shaky head, a little drop shot, a Ned rig, a finesse swim bait, a little tiny wacky rig. For those days when you have to finesse, it's so much better to do it with a spinning combo, okay? So get over your fear of spinning if you're one of those anglers. But this is a versatile rod in my 3-rod setup here. It allows me to fish those lighter baits. It allows me to finesse when things get tough. It allows me to finesse in clear water. I'd be lost without a spinning rod. And because we're limited to 3, I'm going to give you the most versatile spinning rod action and reel combo ever created in the history of the world. And once again, listen, these are all Abu Garcia, Revo Ike stuff that I'm showing you, but whatever manufacturer you use, doesn't matter. Pay attention to the length and the action. And this is where we're going to get versatility, okay? My spinning rod choice in this 3-rod lineup is a 7-foot medium. A 7-foot straight medium spinning rod, okay? And I did that for a few reasons. The one, just like the casting, I've got spinning rods that are shorter. I've got 6'10" medium lights that are great for real little stuff. And I've got spinning rods all the way up to 7 foot 8 inches that are medium heavy for bigger baits, longer cast. But when you're talking about a spinning rod that can do it all, and I mean all in the finesse realm, this is it. 7-foot medium action. When we drop down to a medium in a graphite rod, okay, now look at this bend. Now I'm going to put a load, just like I did with that casting rod, right? Now look at how much more bend there is in that rod, right? So on that casting rod, we said 20 or 30% of the rod. We went down to the 4th or 5th guide. These guides are spaced a little different, but look at this. Look at how much more the rod bends here, right? Now I'm going from the tip, and I'm going about not quite halfway. I'm going almost halfway, not quite halfway down. And so now I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm at my 6th guide, and I've got bend. And from that 6th or 7th guide, depending on your rod manufacturer, from there down, it's backbone. So a medium action spinning gives you a lot more tip, but you've still got backbone in that rod. One of the things I see one of the mistakes a lot of spinning rod buyers make is getting a spinning rod that's ultra light. It's whippy from the tip almost all the way to the reel. Super flimsy. Even for these techniques where we're talking about smaller baits, drop shot, shaky head, wacky rig, Ned rig, we still need a little backbone. Even on techniques where we're not setting the hook, we're reeling into it. At some point, the flexibility of that rod catches up with the backbone. And the backbone is what drives that hook home. A lot of these finesse techniques are single hook. Look at that. This is a VMC shaky head with a little chigger crawl. I love this when things get tough. But I have to connect with that fish at some point. I have to drive that hook home. So that medium action versus a medium light or ultra light is a lot more versatile. And that's why I'm going to go with the 7-foot medium for my spinning rod action and length. 7-foot length, you can do everything from skipping docks to drop shotting, long cast, overhand roll cast. 7 foot's the most versatile length ever created, okay? So the rod, 7-foot medium action spinning rod. The reel, I want you to go with a medium to medium fast retrieve in a little bigger size than what you would normally throw. And I'm going to explain that. And the reel that I have on this 7-foot medium is the Revo Ike 30 size, okay? So in the spinning reel world, I want you to look at the 30 or 40 size spinning reels, and some manufacturers, it's 3,000 or 4,000. So go a little up in reel size. And the reason you're going to do that, remember, we're limited to 3 rods. This is going to be your only spinning rod. That little bit bigger spool on the 30s and 40s, or 3,000s and 4,000s, allow you to have more versatility in line choice. You can use some different line types, some heavier line types, and it allows you to put more line on and not overfill the reel. We don't want to have those spinning reel problems where you get bird's nests. So by going to a little bit bigger reel, we don't have to fill it up all the way to the edge of the rim of the spool to have a lot of line on it, and will prevent some of those tangles and bird's nests, okay? So a 30-sized, 40-size spinning reel, 3,000, 4,000, in a medium to medium fast gear ratio. On spinning reels, you don't see the blazing fast retrieves. You're more inclined to see low-end gear ratio, low-end retrieves. But on this spinning, this is a really good one with Abu Garcia. This is a 5-8-1, which in the spinning world is pretty fast. It's pretty quick. So something in the high 5s to low 6s in spinning reel is going to be ideal. Last thing, just like the casting reel, look for a couple what should be reel standards when you get that 30 or 40 size reel. You want that anti-reverse, right? This Abu Garcia Revo Ike has a great anti-reverse system. There's no knuckle slap, okay? You want a great drag system. This Revo Ike has it. You want ball bearings, right? Just like in that casting reel. And you want, I'd say, 8 or 10 ball bearings or more. This Revo Ike spinning reel has 10 ball bearings. That makes that reel smooth, okay? Once again, if I'm limited to one spinning rod, I need a 7-foot medium. I need a 30 or 40 size reel on there. I can put braid, straight fluoro, straight mono, braid to a floor leader. I can fish drop shot, shaky head, any of the finesse applications, and all the casting techniques, including the up close skipping stuff. I can do it all with a 7-foot medium spinning. Number 2, and you know, right there, to be quite honest with you, in these 2 rods are 7.4 graphite casting medium heavy and our 7-foot graphite spinning medium. Man, so many techniques from finesse fishing to power fishing. I can do with those 2 rods, but this is top 3 rods to do it all. And I want to give you number 3. And I would feel terrible about completing this list of my top 3 rods if I didn't throw a delay rod, more, maybe a better way to say it is a composite or fiberglass blend rod into the mix. All right, I know a lot of you right now, you're hitting pause because you're scratching your head and you're saying, composite? Fiberglass? What are you talking about? It's 2021. Aren't all rods graphite? And this is why this 3rd rod is just as important as the other 2. And when you're talking about treble hooked lures, look at this. When you're talking about lures that have treble hooks, look, they're so sharp I can't even get it off of there. Crankbaits, jerk baits, top waters, anything that has a set of trebles on it, okay? Look at that one right there. You can't get more classic than that. That's a Rapala DT6 in Demon. How many bass over the last 5 years you think were caught with that thing? A couple billion? Probably. Any of these treble hook lures, got a lot more behind me. Anything with the treble hook, jerkbait, topwater, anything that has trebles dangling from it, I'd rather throw a composite rod or a fiberglass graphite blended rod. And I want to tell you why. I want to give you the reasons why. Let me just show you the bait first of all and explain what happens with this treble hook bait. And this could be a topwater walking across the top, a popper, a walking bait. It could be a jerk bait slashing through the column. It could be a little crankbait. It could be a 20-foot diver. But that bait's treble hooks. And when that bass comes up and starts to get near that bait and starts to get his mouth around it to eat it, you feel it. As you're reeling that bait or as you're working that topwater, you see the explosion, you see the blow up, or you feel that bass eat it. And your instinct is to pull. Your instinct is to start setting the hook. It's human nature. This rod that I'm going to show you, this delay composite blended rod, gives you a little delay. That's why I call them delay rods. When that fish eats it, topwater, jerkbait, crankbait, anything with treble hooks, it slows down your hook set a little bit. And instead of that fish just eating it and you pulling it, and he's only got the back hook, that little microsecond of a delay, now the fish gets that whole crankbait in his mouth. He gets that whole topwater, jerkbait in his mouth. Then you set the hook, and he's got the whole bait. So better hookup percentage, better casting distance. A lot of these lures, when you talk about this treble hook family of lures, topwater, a crankbait, for that crankbait to reach maximum diving depth, I need a long cast. Same thing with the jerkbait, suspending jerkbait. Same thing with the topwater. A lot of times I'm bombing it to schooling fish. A lot of these treble hook lures you have to cast far. And this composite rod, this delay rod, I'm going to show you in a second, it's all going to make sense, lets you make longer cast. Because that tip, you're going to see it in a second, that tip is flimsy, it's flexible, it's almost like a rubber band. It lets you load the rod, cast the bait further. All right, last but not least, and then I'm going to show you the rod finally, is landing fish on treble hook baits. How many of you watching this right now have fished a crankbait or a jerkbait or a topwater, has 2 or 3 sets of trebles on it, and you have that fish and yeah, he's just about to the net, and your line rises and you see that fish go, and that crankbait's in his mouth, and when he goes this way, your crankbait, your topwater, your jerkbait flies out that way, and you lose the fish, right? Lost fish with treble hook lures. This rod, on this third rod I'm going to tell you about, allows you to land more fish because it's composite. It's a blended rod, and it's got give to it, okay? So here's what I'm talking about when we talk about a delay rod, a composite rod. You're going to see now, every one of these rods, I've put a load on the rod. I've put a bend on the rod, and I've showed you the ratio of flex to rod. This is a 7-foot medium action composite rod, delay rod. And watch all the extra bend on this. Look at it. I'm literally bending the rod in half. Look at it. It's super parabolic, super flimsy. Look at that. Look, it looks like an ugly stick. It's ridiculous, right? Super flexible. 50% of the way down the rod. Half of the rod. Look, half of the rod is tipped. From that tip all the way, let's count the guides on this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. About to my 9th or 10th guide. Look at it. I am smack dab in the middle of that rod. That's my 9th guide. I am smack in the middle of that rod. Half of the rod, the front half of the rod, is flex. And that's achieved by the material of the rod. You cannot do that with graphite. That parabolic flexibility is that blended material of fiberglass and graphite composite, and that's what's going to give you the delay in the hook set. It's also going to let you launch that bait on the cast. Can you imagine this? Look, like a rubber band. You go back to cast, the weight of that bait, as you sling it out, look at it. It loads the rod. Watch this, ready? Boing. See it again? Boing. Loads that rod and launches it. The other thing, you're fighting that fish. He comes up and jumps. A graphite rod, a medium heavy graphite, only flexes to here. When that fish goes to jump, it only gives so much. But now, when that fish is fighting with that crankbait, that jerkbait, that topwater, look. It gives to the fish, allowing those trebles to stay pinned in his mouth, and you're going to land so many more. So for rod number 3, a 7, and again, on length and action, I'm trying to be versatile to allow you one rod to do all these treble hook techniques. Jerkbait, topwater, crankbait. If I had to pick one of my delay rods, I'm going with the 7-foot medium delay rod. This is a 7-foot medium Abu Garcia Ike delay. A lot of other companies make composite parabolic rods, 7-foot medium for treble hooked lures, jerkbaits, crankbaits, topwaters. Now I'm going to pair this, by the way, this is a casting reel. Most of these treble hook lures I'm throwing weigh more than 1/4 ounce. A lot of those weigh 1/2 ounce or more. And I'm going with a casting rod, casting reel. This time on my casting reel, once again, we only got 3 combos here. I'm going to go with a slower gear ratio. Now, instead of that fast gear ratio, you heard us talking about the 8-0-1 on the 7-4 medium heavy. Now I'm going to a medium to medium slow retrieve bait casting reel. And this one to me is the perfect medium retrieve. And it's a 6-6-1 gear ratio. So I'm telling you, any of these low profile casting reels that are 5-8-1, 5-6-1 to about 6-8-1 are good. This one, 6-6-1, perfect in between. And let me give you the specs. Look at how much less line we're picking up with the 6-6-1. You remember it was 36.8 something, 0.83 inches on the fast retrieve. Now we're at 27.68 inches of line per turn. But what we gain, we lose a little in line recovery, but what we gain is power and methodical retrieve, right? That's slowing yourself down, steadying yourself on purpose. And since we're going to have 2 casting reels, I want you to have a fast gear ratio and I want you to have a medium gear ratio. Because a lot of times when I'm fishing a lure, especially a crankbait or a jerkbait or a topwater, I'm trying to be more methodical. A chatterbait is another good one. A lot of guys throw a chatterbait on these delay rods as well. More methodical, right? And if you're throwing a big crankbait, you want that power, more power to wind it down deep. You're going to get that with a slower ratio. Okay, so 6-6-1, more of a medium to medium slow retrieve casting reel. Same thing, low profile, 10 ball bearings or more, anti-reverse, all those things are important. But that 7-foot medium action delay rod, that lower gear ratio reel, 6-6-1, is what I use for treble hooks. Any treble hook lure. All right, there you go. That was a long-winded explanation on coming up with 3 rods to do it all. Have one for those bigger baits, medium heavy action, 7-4 with a fast gear ratio reel. Have a spinning rod, 7-foot medium. You're going to be able to do it all in the finesse fishing world with those smaller baits. And have a delay rod, a 7-foot medium parabolic rod that's a composite material for those treble hook baits. Those 3 rods right there, at the end of the day, if I just had these 3 rods in my boat with me, I'm street fishing, whatever I'm doing, I can do it all with these 3 rods. Man, I hope you enjoyed this edition of In the Shop. If you did, do me a favor. Stop right now. Stop what you're doing before this next video comes on. Hit my subscribe button right down there. Mash that button. Become a subscriber to my channel. We're going to get you brand new content every single week. If you're already a subscriber, please tell your fishing buddies about Mike Iaconelli Fishing on YouTube. They're going to learn a lot. Hope you have a wonderful day. Get those 3 rods, and you're going to be able to do it all.